Hello charmings, and welcome to Taming a Monster, the series where I take some of Gran Turismo 7's most ridiculous cars to see if I can tweak them so that a talentless pleb like me can handle them without being killed to death. Like any common ruffian, I'm using a bog-standard PlayStation 5 controller, and I have all driver assists turned off, except for ABS. Let's see what car is trying to murder me today. Today, I'm driving a car with an engine swap I've never tried before. You know what that means? Never gets old. The car I'm trying to tame today is the C6 Corvette with the engine from a Bugatti, tuned to 1850 horsepower, which is almost 17 times as much power as my real-life daily driver. The Corvette was no slouch to begin with, thanks to its tunable LS power plant, and it's actually one of my favourite cars in the entire game, but this engine should prove entertaining. As usual, all the Go Faster parts have been fitted along with the wide body. No tweaks have yet been made to any of the adjustable parts, except for the downforce, which has been maxed. The wheels are in the standard size with a wide offset, and as usual the car has a front splitter, rear diffuser, and the custom wing for maximum downforce. The Type A spoiler, despite looking similar, will give less rear downforce. I have a video guide to aero parts and downforce tuning on my channel if you're interested. Usually, I'd pick an event from the World Circuits, but today I thought I'd make things a bit more interesting by creating a custom race against all of my other upgraded supercars. So, along with setting the car up, I've got to fight my way past 19 other 1000 horsepower monsters. There's something satisfying about a grid full of cars with liveries. So, this car. You'd think sending 1800 horsepower to the rear wheels would be terrifying, and while this car does wheel spin up to 160 miles per hour, it's weirdly stable. As usual, it leans too much, which makes it feel less controllable at speed, but generally, we shouldn't need to do too much to get the best out of this car. Braking distances take a lot of getting used to, but that's not because the brakes are bad, it's just that this car is so fast. I imagine the reason most people have had issues with the C6 Corvette is coming up.
Sick drift, bro.
Without tweaks, the suspension is too low and too soft, so we get arch rubbing, which wrenches the steering and sends me headfirst into a coma.
What the fuck? Oh no. Ow.
After I recovered from the head trauma, I raised the ride height and increased the natural frequency to make sure that we don't get a repeat of that mess. This is almost always the cause of steering wrenching to the side under braking, something people who've modified the E36 M3 will be all too familiar with. Funnily enough, that is pretty much all you have to do to make the C6 Corvette handle well with max power and racing tyres. Without the issue of the wheels hitting the arches, this car handles its absurd power better than you'd expect, although it'll wheel spin up to 150 miles per hour, so care needs to be taken with applying the throttle. Plus, braking distances can be tricky to get right, thanks to the ludicrous way in which this car gains speed. 300 horsepower over a stock Chiron in a car that weighs about 700 kilograms less will have that effect, shockingly. While the car is what you could call tamed, I still make a few more tweaks. I increased the front anti-roll bar slightly to try and improve stability, and I reduced the negative camber to improve straight line traction, which should slightly help with braking. There wasn't much difference, but the car did still improve slightly. Interestingly, there is another Corvette C6 in this custom race, running the stock engine. All of the cars here are fully upgraded, so the Corvette is ironically one of the less powerful cars on the grid. Yet it competes very well with the higher tier cars. It highlights just how good this car is on its standard engine, and that standard engine sounds godly once it's upgraded. I decided to do one last set of tweaks before the usual Nurburgring Test. I adjusted the LST, increasing initial torque slightly to make the car slightly more forgiving at the expense of some agility. Acceleration sensitivity was reduced to prevent some of the power oversteer when wheel spinning. Braking sensitivity was also reduced to try and improve braking response. Since this car is capable of 300 miles per hour, I also adjusted the gear ratios so that the C6 will no longer wheel spin in 5th gear. I also added some rearward ballast weight to improve traction out of corners. Not too much though, we don't want the brakes to be any worse than they already are. Once again, the changes were subtle, but I'd say the car was complete. I'm still not used to sailing past 1000 horsepower hypercars as if they're not moving. You may have seen the Lamborghini Gallardo on the track, and that's what we'll feature in the next video. Next up, we need to try the Nurburgring. I immediately ran into a slight problem. So it turns out the Corvette is so fast that it can literally fly. I also ran into more issues with the wheels hitting the arches, so this is my final setup. With hindsight, I would raise the ride height even more because, as you'll see, I still had some moments where the tyres hit the arches. Though this is only particularly necessary on the Nordschleife. Before filming this video, I did a quick test lap without any ballast weight, and believe it or not, the Corvette was actually a tad slower than the Escudo-swapped GTO from a few episodes back, so I wasn't expecting any miracles for this run. However, this car is nowhere near as scary or as unstable as you might think. Sure, it's difficult to drive around the Nordschleife, but that's nothing to do with any issues with the car itself. It's just so fast in a straight line that the downforce isn't enough to counteract it. At lower speeds though, it's really quite a friendly monster. Naturally you can't just floor it out of corners. With this level of power, some amount of throttle control is necessary. However, one thing worth bringing up is that the Corvette C6 is one of the best road cars in Gran Turismo 7 even without this engine swap, which is the main reason I've never tried it until today. Despite being 850 horsepower down, it doesn't really sacrifice much in terms of pace, not to mention it sounds excellent. I highly recommend you try it. Believe it or not, this car is genuinely one of the easiest to drive yet. That is, until the last few sectors. There's a small crest after the Flansgarten section where the car is travelling so fast it leaves the ground once again. The loss of control as a result of that caused me to lose about 4 seconds. The other was Tiergarten, where the wheels hit the arches and wrenched the steering again. This lost me roughly another second or two, but despite this, the Corvette is now the fastest monster yet. With a few more attempts, I could get this car under the 6-minute mark, and with a better driver it could go even faster still. So, now I'm sad that the GTO is no longer at the top of the leaderboard. I hope my settings helped and that you enjoyed this video. Join me next time for the winner of my community vote, the Lamborghini Gallardo, a car that doesn't need an engine swap to be terrifying. Thank you for watching, and if you're feeling particularly generous, I would greatly appreciate your subscription. Take care, and ta-ra!